Hey, good morning, everyone. It is Saturday. It is 7:30. Full disclosure, I've not made it on time to any of the 7:30 sessions, except for today, obviously. So you should give yourselves a round of applause just for showing up and being here. And I hope you've had a wonderful time so far and been inspired and re-energized by meeting in person. Some of you, this might be your 10th NACFC, some it's your first in person. So we're just excited to be here with you this morning. And we have our nice little cozy breakfast tables. I think there's a lunch and learn after in this room, so that's why we have this fun table seating. So welcome to Accommodations for our CF patients across the lifespan, empowering patients and families to thrive. I am Kimberly Morse. I'm a social worker from Children's Hospital Los Angeles, representing the West Coast and Peds. I'm here with my co-chair, Megan Lagergren. She's representing adults from Johns Hopkins Medical Center. And so hopefully, here just a glance of our learning objectives. But hopefully you know this to be true. Whether you've discovered it in this conference, you've known it for years. But having CF and pursuing goals and dreams is possible. Treating physical health and mental health for people with CF is essential. And so we hope this presentation and the words you hear today echo that sentiment. This morning we have presentations from a nursing, legal, and social work lens, to name a few. It should also be noted that all of our presenters have a connection to CF, not only as professionals and advocates, as well as being either a person with CF, a parent with a person with CF, or a friend of a person with CF. Over the next 2 hours, our speakers will highlight accommodations and available supports so that individuals with CF can live and thrive academically, professionally, socially, and mentally, from pediatric age through adulthood. Some of this information may be very familiar to some of you or new to others, but we hope you all take something away with you today. And as 3 of our speakers are also persons with CF, as I mentioned, we were only able to have one of these speakers appear in person. However, there were some unprecedented circumstances resulting in her not being able to be with us live in Philadelphia. So thank you as we watch 3 recorded sessions together, along with our in-person speakers, Siri Vea and Rachel Jackson. Some of you are probably already familiar with the Q&A process in terms of submitting through the app. Just a reminder, we're in session DG19, so you click on the Q&A button at the bottom navigation bar in the app. You can submit questions throughout the session, and then we'll have a Q&A session at the end. For Emily, Beth, and Piper, Piper's presentations, since they're not here for the live Q&A, they have included their emails and websites in their presentations. So please make note of that, take a picture. Should you have any questions, they'll be very available after the session and, as they always are, to answer any questions about the information they talk about. However, Rachel, Siri, Megan, and myself will be here to answer some questions through the app and then to see if you have any in person. Okay. So we're going to start by, I will have you. Yep, sorry.
Okay, so
today
up first
we're talking about accommodation.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. Okay, so up first we're going to hear from Beth Soufian. I'm guessing most people in the room have heard of Beth. If you have not, she is the director of CF Legal Information Hotline for the past 24 years, which provides confidential legal information for persons with CF. She is also the director of the CF Social Security Project, which represents people with CF and applications for Social Security benefits and Social Security continuing disability reviews. Both programs are funded by the CF Foundation. Beth is an attorney and an individual that also has CF.
No relationships to disclose related to this presentation. This presentation is informational only. Nothing in this presentation is intended to be legal advice. A person should consult with a qualified attorney about their unique situation. My name is Beth Suffian. I'm a partner in the law firm of Suffian and Passamano. I am director of the CF Legal Information Hotline for the past 25 years, and I'm also director of the CF Social Security Project. I've been practicing law for 32 years, and I'm 57 years old and have cystic fibrosis. I am director of the CF Legal Information Hotline, which was established in 1998. The hotline provides free and confidential information on the laws that protect people with CF. The hotline is operated by the law firm of Suffian and Passamano and is sponsored by the CF Foundation, although hotline employees are not employees of the CF Foundation. If CF care team members, people with CF, or their family members have questions about education rights, employment rights, Social Security benefits, Medicaid, Medicare, or insurance issues, people can contact the CF Legal Information for information on these topics. If you would like more information about the CF Legal Information Hotline, you can see our poster, which is poster 314, titled The Cystic Fibrosis Legal Information Hotline, a reliable source for the CF community during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond. And on the poster, you'll see that the first year of the pandemic, we had over 13,000 calls. And for the second year, we had close to 10,000 calls. We have in our law firm 5 paralegals and 3 attorneys that assist people with CF. To contact the CF Legal Information Hotline, the best way to do that is by emailing cflegal@suffianpassamano.com. If someone does not have access to email, 1-800-622-0385 is where people can leave a message, and then they will be called back about setting up a consultation call. So if you email, then our staff will contact you by email to figure out the best time to call you. CF Center care teams can schedule calls with their patients during clinic visits if they think that that is the best way to do it for their patients. Or, of course, CF care team members, if the patient agrees, can be on the phone when the hotline is talking to someone. So I'm very pleased to be talking today and appreciate the session chairs inviting me to speak. The first topic that they want me to speak about is accommodations in education. And so I'm going to give you just a brief overview of the different laws that apply and then how we're seeing these laws helping people with CF in education arenas. So accommodations in education for disabled students are available through 3 separate federal laws. And a federal law applies throughout the United States. So Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was passed in 1975. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 is the section that applies to education. And the Americans with Disabilities Act may have some application to education, and that law was passed in 1990. There may be state laws in your state that provide additional protections, but today I'm just going to focus on the federal law protection. Each law has a different scope of coverage. So for public, primary, and secondary school education programs are going to be covered by the IDEA, Section 504, and sometimes the ADA. Private primary and secondary schools are not covered by the IDEA, A private school may be covered, a private primary or secondary school may be covered by Section 504 if the school receives federal funding. And then lastly, a private primary and secondary school may be covered by the Americans with Disabilities Act, depending on the relief the student needs. Private and public colleges and universities may be covered by Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act if the school receives federal funding. But private public colleges and universities are not covered by the IDEA. And so sometimes families think that they just have to take their either IEP plan, individual's education plan, or their 504 plan to the college and university, and that college or university will automatically start providing those accommodations. Most of the time, the private public college or university will want to have a discussion with the student about what accommodations they need, and the student may not be offered the same accommodations they had in high school. When developing an IEP or a Section 504 plan, it is important to request accommodations or modifications of policies that are needed to obtain an appropriate education for the student. So for example, if the student wants to self-carry enzymes, if the reason given by the medical team is that this will encourage independence for the student, that will not be something that is related to an appropriate education. And if that is the reason given, then the student's request will not be granted. If the request is tied to the ability of the student to attend school, and there is an explanation of the possibility if the student does not take their enzymes right before they eat, the possibility of getting sick and not being able to attend school, that rationale does tie in to the ability to get an appropriate education. So the school can request medical opinions from the medical team about the need for the accommodation and how that need ties in to receiving an appropriate education. So obtaining the written plan with the school's agreement is extremely important. If there's just a verbal agreement or an email agreeing to do something for the student, that is not going to be enforceable if the school does not follow through on what they've written in an email or an oral agreement. So it is important to get the needs of the student that the school agrees to provide written down into either an IEP or a 504 plan. Here are some of the frequent plan requests that we hear about on the hotline. So one that has come up more often since the pandemic is allowing remote access to classes. We have quite a few calls in the past few months about cross-infection issues when there are either two students with CF at a school, or sometimes more, and more recently when there's a teacher with CF and a student with CF. There seem to be quite a lot of parents who are facing issues with having either a teacher with CF in their school or another student, and trying to navigate how to address cross-infection concerns with the school. Carrying and self-administering enzymes at mealtimes at school is also a frequent subject of hotline calls. And some schools are very quick to allow this, and other schools need more documentation and discussion before they will agree to allow a child to self-administer. Frequent restroom visits is often very helpful to have memorialized in an IEP or a 504. And that's because a lot of schools seem to have very strict rules about going to the bathroom, which frankly, this used to surprise me, but I've gotten so many calls about this that I've realized that I guess schools don't want children going to the bathroom. Not really sure why, but it is important for the child with CF who does need to go to the bathroom a lot. I think it is helpful to have modification to the policy that students can only go to the bathroom once or twice a day. Then the child with CF could ask for a modification of that policy and memorialize it in an IEP or a Section 504 plan. Rescheduling exams for illness if you're sick has always been a very popular accommodation to set out an IEP or 504. Receiving assignments at home or in the hospital has always been a popular accommodation. And then in some areas of the country, being excused from outdoor activities during extreme outdoor temperatures has been extremely helpful as well. A due process hearing is a formal way to resolve disputes with a school about educational issues related to the child's disability. The due process hearing are the procedures to enforce IEP and 504 plans. So that would be when the school has a plan and they fail to follow the plan. Next would be to compel a school to meet and agree to an IEP or 504 plan. And we have had recently a lot of calls from parents who have schools that refuse to meet. And the remedy would be to ask for a due process hearing, to have a hearing officer require the school to meet. And the last would be to address other duties under the IDEA or Section 504. Parents have the right at the due process hearing to present evidence and witnesses to an impartial hearing officer, and the parent would file a request for the due process hearing with the state education office. Accommodations in employment are going to come from a different, are going to be a little different. So for private employees, the Americans with Disabilities Act would give employees who work at an employer with 15 or more employees the ability to get accommodations or modifications of policies. And then if you work for the federal government or a federal contractor or an employer who receives federal funds, you would use Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. So the employer must have 15 or more employees for the ADA to apply, and the employee must be a qualified individual with a disability. So that means the person must be able to perform the essential functions of the job with or without a reasonable accommodation. So disability is defined differently in the ADA than Social Security Act or other laws. And in the ADA, it means you have a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits a major life activity. Or you have a record of a disability, or you're being regarded as having a disability. Employers have the duty to provide a reasonable accommodation to qualified individuals with a disability, but there is no duty to provide accommodations that are unduly burdensome to the employer. So that's important for people to know. But for most people with CF, the accommodations in employment that they need are usually simple. During COVID, the height of COVID, and still, we do have people who've requested the accommodation of working from home, and that has been very successful. And I think people with different start times or the ability to, sometimes people who work in the computer, with computers, often need to have an accommodation of being able to have a drink at their desk, and things like that. The United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as the EEOC, is the agency that enforces the Americans with Disabilities Act in employment. Employment discrimination claims are initiated by filing a charge of discrimination with the EEOC within 180 days of the alleged discrimination, or the claimant may have up to 300 days to file the charge if there is a state or local agency that does receive claims of disability discrimination in employment. A person does not have to have an attorney in order to file with the EEOC, and there is no charge to file. Some states have their own state and human rights commissions that enforce state discrimination laws and may have different timelines for filing. We have found, especially in the past year, that many people with CF have filed charges of discrimination with the EEOC, and they have been able to successfully negotiate a resolution to their charge. Usually the EEOC will request that the employer participate in a mediation with the employee. And we have been hearing from people with CF who contact the hotline. We give them information on their rights and how the process works. And there have been people recently that have been very successful in advocating for their rights at the EEOC. Kim has asked me to give a little bit of information about my own experience with accommodations in school or work. In terms of school, when I started college, I did not know about Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and so I did find myself needing an air conditioner after I passed out in my third day of college. And was carried to the CF center that was across the street by a bunch of students. And the school told me that they could not provide an air conditioner, and I did not know anything about my legal right to request a modification of their policy that the school did not allow air conditioners in dorms. So in work, for me, when I started to work as an attorney at a big law firm, there was no Americans with Disabilities Act. And since Section 504 did not apply, since it was a private law firm, I didn't really have any right to ask for an accommodation. And I did find that when people found out that I had cystic fibrosis, I was immediately discriminated against in my ability to continue working. And so I am grateful that people with CF now have both the ability to have accommodations in school and accommodations in work, and also a prohibition against discriminating against a person with CF or another disability when they are performing the job or able to perform the job. So I think we've come a long way, and I think that's really positive for people with CF. If you or your patients have questions, please have them email us at cflegal@suffiandpassamano.com, and we can set up a time to talk. Social workers or CF care team members can arrange for calls while people are in the clinic. So if you know someone's coming in, you can arrange for a time for us to call and speak to you. Or of course, care team members can call on their own. And the phone number, 1-800-622-0385, is another way to call, leave a message, and we will schedule a time to speak with people. Thank you very much.
I love how Beth said we have come a long way. That is very true in many ways with protecting people with CF and medical advances. So I like that sentiment. And this is a great segue into our next speaker that I will have Megan introduce, who is here with us today all the way from Massachusetts.
All right, so up next we have Rachel Jackson. Rachel is a school nurse at a high school in Massachusetts. She earned her master's degree in education and has many years of acute care experience, along with an expertise in pediatrics, maternal and child health, home visit nursing, and hospice. Rachel was faced with the challenge of accommodating 3 students with CF who attended high school together, and we're happy to have her here to share her experience.
Thank you. Good morning. So I have nothing to disclose. There are no relationships. So I am the school nurse at Walpole High School, which is in the suburbs of Boston. We have approximately 1,200 students. I went to Walpole High School and graduated in 1992. And ironically enough, the last person that attended Walpole High School that had CF was graduated in 92 as well, and he was one of my dearest friends. And little did I know, over 20 years later, I would have 3 students with cystic fibrosis at my school at the same time. When we were growing up, Chris would go into the hospital quite frequently for his cleanouts, and at that time, he was on the 10th floor with all of the other students with CF, and they all had such a unique relationship and friendship, and were leaning on each other, and all of their friends outside of the CF world would come in. We would have parties on the floor. I mean, the staff was awesome, and they made it a really great experience. But little did we know that this was going to be an issue. So my knowledge about CF started when I was in 7th grade, and here I am in my career now 20 years later, and it came in very handy. So I knew in 2016, well, I knew before that because they were in the Walpole school systems forever. But in 2016, I started preparing because I knew this was going to be a challenge. So we had, when all 3 of them were there, 2 of them were freshmen and 1 was a sophomore. I reached out to many different places to see if anyone had any information. Boston Children's really didn't have anything, but they were really interested to see what I was going to do. Same thing with the CF Foundation. There was a lot of information. Yeah. There was a lot of information on 2 students. Well, I shouldn't say a lot. There was a good amount of information on having 2 students, but really just basically saying keep them apart. Well, okay, but how do I do that? So everyone had a lot of interest to see how this was going to turn out, hence why I'm here. The CF Foundation had me write a couple blogs, you may have seen them on the site, about the progression of this whole plan. And I literally had a dream one night about making an action plan for all of the students. So I did. I woke up and I started putting it together. So there's clips throughout this. We at Walpole High School have a film class, and it's been going on for over 20 years. And part of that class is a film festival. And the students do everything from writing the script to casting to editing, everything, music. And in 2017, they started doing a documentary on cystic fibrosis and having the 3 students there. They went into Children's Hospital and they interviewed the doctors. This is Dr. S or Dr. Greg, because no one can ever say his last name. And all of the students were in the movie as well. And it's a really great insight into what it's like to have CF as a teenager. So we'll play his clip.
People with cystic fibrosis to not be in the same place so they don't contaminate or share bacteria that can be transmitted by one person with CF coughing and then another person with CF picking it up.
The studies show that these particular bacteria that are detrimental to CF patients, they show that a person with CF should never be within 6 feet of another person with CF.
I feel really safe with Nurse Jackson's schedule and her planning. It does really help because I never really see them at all. And if I do, I'll just give them a smile or a wave in the hall.
Nurse Jackson has made a little plan for me and the other two kids with cystic fibrosis. Make sure like we don't like cross paths or anything, or like encounter one another.
So you'll see, yeah. So this is the plan that they all had. So it had their picture on it, it was updated every year, and they all had different point places in the school. And they had some information, so one of them did have a G-tube, so I wanted the teachers to know that. The teachers always called my office before sending anyone to me or changing their location, because we put a lot of effort into scheduling all of their classes to be in separate wings of the building and separate classrooms. So they had separate stairwells that they used, separate bathrooms, separate emergency point places, separate places to sit in the cafeteria, separate places in the auditorium. There wasn't enough room, so this is the second half of it. We are lucky in Massachusetts, we have it written into our medication delegation law that students with cystic fibrosis are one of the exceptions on self-carry, so they can carry their enzymes with them, but just making sure that the teachers knew that these students can self-medicate, and they don't see a student sitting in the cafeteria taking 6 pills. And I wrote it right in here that they can have water with them at all times, the unlimited bathroom breaks. So everything that Beth was just talking about was written into this action plan, but they also either had an IEP or a 504. One of them, Jimmy, had an IEP, and the other two had a 504. And all of this was written in there as well with their medical documentation from their team to support it. As I said, Massachusetts was pretty good at, they never said anything about following the doctor's orders. I know that other states have had more difficulty. Another thing that I did was we came up with a consent form because I wanted the families to, they all knew of each other and they've all seen pictures of each other, but I just wanted it documented that they knew that their CF information was going to be shared, their picture was going to be shared, and we just had everything for legal reasons if if anything ever had come up. So, the biggest challenges, navigating the school. So every year, myself and one of the guidance counselors would schedule their classes, and as I said, we would make sure that they were in different classrooms, different wings of the building. They had different staircases that they used. Just being a teenager is hard, never mind having a life-limiting disease, never mind having 2 other people that you have to avoid with that disease. So we wanted to make it, my goal was to make it as normal of an experience as I could. And I think we accomplished that. Prom, that was a real big, all 3 went to the same prom. So you're gonna see in the next slide my color-coded map that I made for everyone to attend prom. And we had balloons on all around signifying where they could go. Everyone had a different color balloon. So there's a balloon at their table, there's a balloon at the part in their dance floor, a balloon in which buffet they could use, and it took a lot, but it worked. Hospitalizations, that's another thing. I made it so if they were hospitalized, they could go in, get their PICC line, start their treatments, and then they could come out and I did their treatments at school. So they could continue to come to school if they were well enough to do so. So that made a big difference. They were able to be in school instead of sitting in the hospital trying to keep up with their work. So yes, time, we never had enough time. And I really just wanted them to be able to be kids, to be students. They all participated in after-school activities. One of them played soccer. At the beginning of the year, I would call every town that they were playing to make sure there wasn't another student with cystic fibrosis at that school. If there was, then we would narrow it down. Did they play soccer? Another was in dance company, and another was in the play. and film festivals. So they were all able to have after-school activities and pretty much a high school experience just like everyone else. So here we are, prom. So everyone was color-coded and they had different entrances, and they had their balloons at the table, and then different buffets, different bathrooms. We have a receiving line when the students come in, so Deirdre was the only one that used it because she was a senior. The other two were juniors. Little did we know, COVID, the juniors weren't even going to get a prom, but another prom. So we staggered their arrival, we staggered their departure, and I went an hour before and made the dance floor bigger, walked around with my tape measure, and everyone was assigned a staff person, and it was that staff person's job to just watch them, and if they were getting too close to someone else, just tell them to move apart, and it worked. Not quite sure how, but it did. This is Gillette Stadium. That's a map of Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, where the Patriots play. That's where our prom is, and that's how we did it. I know. It was crazy. So this is a good
Living with
insight
cystic
in their
fibrosis,
treatments.
probably like the hardest part about it. I don't know, just keeping up with literally everything you have to do.
The daily routine with keeping up with my meds and my treatment is like the hardest part about living with CF.
I have a big old tube that's on my stomach, and it feeds like protein into me. And when I wake up at 6:30 in the morning, I have to like take it off, like flush it with water so nothing gross or sticky like stays in there, and get gross bacteria. And it's just a bad time for everyone.
Like I do my medical treatments about like once a day, and it takes like an hour and a half. So that definitely does get really draining, especially after like a long day of school and me having like sports after school on top of like a lot of homework. So I'm usually going to bed at like 12 o'clock each night because I just have so much to do with my CF and schoolwork and sports.
So as you can see, Jimmy is a ham. And there's a link to the movie at the end of the presentation, and I really recommend everyone watch it. It's really great. It's a great teaching tool, too. It's good to, I've had places show it to their schools to kind of give their staff a background on CF when they first get a student with cystic fibrosis there. So it is really a good educational piece. So this also was in the movie. They allowed the crew to come to their house, and it was very funny. The crew was very mindful of knowing that they couldn't be near one another, so they scheduled them to go to the houses on different days because they didn't want to be with one and take anything with them to the next. So they were high school juniors that did this, and it really was fabulous. Oop, did I go back? There we go.
And then this thing, you squeeze one of these vials in here, and it turns it into medicine, and I breathe it in, and it softens the mucus in my lungs so I can cough it up, and that's why I have these.
So having that in the documentary was really eye-opening for the staff to see, but also their classmates. They really got an idea of what these kids were going through, and I think we've all seen it. CF is a hard thing for people to understand because you can't see the disability. So you think, oh, they look fine. So having this film really, again, such a great teaching tool and was really helpful to getting everyone in our school on board which I can't say enough about how well the staff listened and followed the plans. It was really quite remarkable. So this slide, or this clip, Jimmy, it starts it off, it's both heartbreaking and heartwarming, and it really brings to light the whole lack of community for them to have each other to lean on. One thing that we did to try to help with that is we started a group chat with all three of them so they could communicate with one another, whether it's, all three of them went to the same dentist, so they would communicate, oh, I'm going to the dentist today. Okay, well, I'm not going until next week. And also communicate with just questions, or if one was going to the football game, they would text and say, I'm going to the football game. You going? All right, I'm going to sit here. You sit here. So it was a little bit, and we were lucky nowadays that we have the technology, but it's not the same as being in person. So I think Jimmy, as much of a ham as he is, he sums it up pretty good here.
Jimmy, do you ever wish you knew Sarah and Deirdre?
You know, I always feel like I kind of know them.
Even though you've never met?
Yeah.
Cool.
I've thought about it. I could imagine my life without CF, but I wouldn't be like me without it. So
The hardest part is definitely not being your normal teenager.
forget I have it sometimes, but then randomly just pops in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, I have CF and it stinks.
Every once in a while, I'm like, oh yeah, I have cystic fibrosis. And that just kind of, lingers on me.
It's pretty tough. I get pretty depressed about it sometimes. It's every now and then. It's really hard. I'm not in school a lot. A lot of people know that. I miss school all the time. So I have a lot of makeup work to do, and I also am hospitalized a lot, which is also pretty tough.
So from a mental health perspective, they each had separate guidance counselors. They would meet with me quite often, and we really tried to help them work through that. And again, my goal was for them to have as normal the same experience at high school as their friends and their peers. I took care of everything from the CF perspective, making sure that they were as safe as they could be, and tried to let them just be teenagers. And by having all of those things in place, like the action plans, the 504s, the IEPs, you had the legal documentation to support what I was doing. From reporting back to everyone as to how I made this work has led to, as I said, the articles with the CF Foundation, and at the end of every article I have my email address, and people have reached out from all over the world, as far away as Australia, wanting to know, see the plans, know how I did it. So I've responded to probably close to 1,000 different nurses, parents, caregivers, social workers, just how we made it work. And I send them a copy of the templates, I send them a copy of the consent forms, but I also send them a link to the movie, because I think that probably would be all I have to send, because it pretty much sums it up. So these are links to all of the different blogs, the action plan, and the documentary. And it is okay to send my slides out if you guys want to do that, so they can just click on them. And that is it.
I was one of the 1,000 people that reached out to Rachel when preparing for this session. I came across 2 of her blog posts on cff.org, and I thought, we have to get her. And it's just really great to have her in person. So thank you for traveling here, and just what a great advocate. I mean, she really went above and beyond. I love the whole prom map, and just like she said, so that Jimmy, Sarah, and Deirdre could have just live just live life and experience everything that they were meant to. And I really feel like Rachel was meant to be, to know Chris growing up in her childhood and then to be the school nurse later for Jimmy, Sarah, and Deirdre. And do check out the documentary. It's really great. We've seen the clips. It's worth watching. And I will be able to send the slides out, I think through the listserv or however we do that, so that you can click on the links as well. And do check that out. So, and I like how Jimmy says, I think he said, I caught this, when you were asking me, he said, I know they can't connect this way that they want to, but he did say, I feel like I know them in a way. And I think that speaks a lot, and that's attributed definitely to all the work and support and advocacy that Rachel provided. So, thank you.
Okay, up next we are going to hear from Piper Betty Welsh. She's the Senior Manager of Community Grants and Organizational Partnerships in the Community Partnerships Department at the CF Foundation. She's a lawyer by training, and she is also an adult with cystic fibrosis and the recipient of 2 double lung transplants. So we're going to hear a little bit from her.
Hello, my name is Piper Beatty Welsh, and I have no relationships to disclose related to this presentation. So just to start off, again, my name is Piper, and this presentation is on supporting the CF journey and community grants opportunities in 2023. I am the Senior Manager of Community Grants and Organizational Partnerships in the Community Partnerships Department at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. So what I'm going to be speaking on this morning really is our 2 community grants programs at the CF Foundation, Impact Grants and Community Support Grants. And these represent the ways in which members of the CF community, including people with cystic fibrosis, family members, friends, and other supporters, can actually receive funding for innovative new projects that serve their community. Additionally, I'm going to be highlighting a select group of the funded opportunities that are currently available to help support people with cystic fibrosis and the broader CF community throughout their lives. So I'd like to begin with just a really quick overview of our community grants programs. In 2016, the CF Foundation launched Impact Grants, which is our flagship community grants award, and the first program to offer direct financial support to members of the CF community for projects and ideas that are designed to help them meet the needs of others with CF and their families and friends. The idea behind these grants actually originated with the Adult Advisory Council, and they're really centered in the notion that people with lived experience with cystic fibrosis are uniquely positioned to know the needs of the community and to develop solutions for new ways to meet those needs. In 2019, this original Impact Grants program was followed with Community Support Grants. And essentially, that's a longer-term funding mechanism for graduates of the Impact Grants program. These grants focus on wellness opportunities, which is very broadly defined, and they're not given to support activities such as medical research, clinical care, lobbying, or fundraising. We often refer to these as engagement-focused grants because they're really designed to empower members of the community through support, connection, and the ability to participate in activities together. Of note, these activities actually don't need to be directly related to life with cystic fibrosis, but many of our grantees do choose to focus on more CF-specific topics, which is also great. Each grant is awarded up to $10,000 per year, and additionally is invited to join an incubator-style cohort, which is designed to support them along the way in achieving their project goals. So throughout their grant term, they're encouraged to grow not just from access to certain CF Foundation support and resources, but also from the expertise and the experiences of their peers within the program, so other project leads that they're interacting with. So I spoke a little bit already about some of our guiding principles, but really what I want to emphasize here is that these grants are designed to empower members of the CF community to identify and help meet the needs that are most important to them. So at the CF Foundation, we hold really tight to a few other guiding principles, and that includes a commitment to excellence and, of course, to inclusivity. All of the grant applications that we receive for these programs are held to a very high standard of review, which also centers the voices of the CF community through the engagement of the Adult Advisory Council, in addition to incorporating perspectives from relevant CF Foundation staff. Our goal is always to create an inclusive culture that really welcomes diversity of thought and truly promotes equity for all members of the CF community. So with that in mind, we have some core values that are an essential piece of the puzzle with these grants. The first is that at least one project lead must have a direct connection to cystic fibrosis. Often this is a person with CF or an immediate family member, such as a parent or a spouse, but it really doesn't have to be. So we've had friends, we've had other supporters as well successfully apply. While the connection to CF is very important, we understand that it may look different in each case, so we try to take a really flexible approach to this requirement. We also require that these projects remain accessible, safe, and equitable. This means that CF Foundation funding should be used to cover the cost of participation for these grants, so all community grants projects are free for participating community members. We do require that funded projects abide by very strict infection prevention and control standards for people with CF. Generally, that means that those projects that target people with CF are online. And we also require that each proposal demonstrate the potential to reach a significant number of community members or an underserved group. As an example of that, we have a state-specific project that limits participation to people with CF in Mississippi. Given the comparatively low level of services available in that state, that project was eligible for funding despite a relatively small target population. Another example might be affinity groups that target a smaller population that needs additional support, such as LGBTQ+ individuals or people who are currently ineligible for modulators. Those are just examples, certainly not an exhaustive list. Another key part of this program is that we solicit applications every year, and the purpose of that is that these grants can stay timely and dynamic and responsive to the needs as they bubble up in the community. I spoke a little bit already about our incubator support, but we really try to make these grants as successful as possible by providing access to some CF-specific resources, as well as a cohort of their peers which they can connect with and use for support and information. So this slide just presents some brief statistics about the program since 2016. One thing I really want to note is that we're really proud to have supported 35 community-led projects to the tune of over $855,000. I harp on this number because to me it just represents this investment that is directly into our CF community, both in terms of the leadership of these grants, as well as the opportunities to engage that we fund. We're also thrilled to report that approximately 85% of all awarded grants receive renewal for at least 2 years, and the credit for that really does go to the project leads within the CF community, so big shout out to them. So having given that overview, I'd like to just switch gears a little bit now, and I'm going to run through just a sampling of our opportunities. It is not an exhaustive list, but these are currently funded and available for people with CF and their families and supporters. I've tried to segment this section up just a little bit by audience, but I do want to give the caveat that some of these projects serve multiple constituent groups within the community. So you can go to cff.org, the Get Involved tab, and you'll find a more exhaustive list of the different community members that are served, as well as all of the grants. So sorry, I skipped a slide there. Here we go. Adults with cystic fibrosis, that's what I'm going to start with. The first grant that I want to highlight is Singspire Private Lessons, and this was founded by a professional vocalist and adult with CF, Ashley Balu-Bonema. It's a 10-week program that focuses on combating cystic fibrosis through the art of singing. Each participant gets private lessons with a professional voice instructor with knowledge of cystic fibrosis. And the focus here is on building confidence and breath control. Throughout these slides, you'll see that I have included web links to each of the programs, so I really encourage you to check them out, learn more about them on those links. The second program I'm going to highlight is the Nourish Breath. This is also led by an adult with CF, Amy LeQuant, and it's a virtual journaling workshop for adults with CF that aims to support the mental and emotional wellness of its writers. So it's a bi-monthly workshop. It's grounded in a really welcoming environment, and the priority for this project is the comfort, the connection with others with CF, and self-care for the participants. Moving on to parents and primary caregivers, the Work Proudly program is a funded program through the Claire's Place Foundation. And it provides both adults with CF and primary caregivers. So that could be a parent, but it could also be a different primary caregiver, with job training and equipment to support remote work and professional development. This grant is a little bit unique in that it does require a referral directly from the care team. So if you're interested in referring a community member from your care center, really encourage you to check out the CF Foundation, the Claire's Place Foundation website. The link is on this slide, and you can find information about referring your patients or their family members there. The next program is Bright Beginnings, Brilliant Futures, and this is an online space designed for primary caregivers, again, potentially parents, but not necessarily, of newly diagnosed infants to build community, empower their families with the tools to live very full lives, and mostly just to feel hopeful about their children's futures. It's a two-part program, and it includes both self-guided informational modules and a community support component. The website was due to launch on November 1st, but due to some administrative challenges, it's actually been pushed back to December 1st. So this is an opportunity to check out cff.org and the Get Involved tab. In December, you'll be able to find a link that will take you directly to Bright Beginnings, Brilliant Futures there. So moving on to partners and loved ones, the first program that I'm going to highlight is Project CF Spouse. This was founded by a wife of someone with cystic fibrosis, and it provides support and connection for spouses and partners of people with CF through casual monthly spouse calls that are online, a virtual discussion forum, a community newsletter, and so much more. It's a great resource for spouses and for partners of people living with CF. The next project is Fall Risk, the musical. This is a cool one because it's a little more creative based. And it is a musical comedy that really brings the CF community and the theater world together through virtual musical theater workshops with a focus on empowering the community and bringing shows from script to stage. So it's a neat comedy. It's written by a person living with cystic fibrosis, and this one is open to partners and loved ones, but also to the broader community in general. The next focus area is children and teens with CF. We really welcome grants in this space because it's something that is a little bit harder to target sometimes. The first project that I'm going to highlight is the Distractors. This is founded by a professional performer who's also an adult with CF, Rebecca Duckworth. And it's a group of comedic actors whose goal is to create personalized, uplifting videos for children with CF to view during stressful medical situations, which may include hospital stays or clinic visits. The videos are completely customized to the interests of each child. They are so cute to look at, and they are comprised of music, storytelling, and skits. They're designed to inspire hope and healing, and also, as the name implies, to provide just a distraction during a time that we know can be a little bit stressful. You can refer patients directly through the website, and they also do shaky parties, which is an opportunity for kids with CF to watch videos during their treatment times and to feel inspired, hopeful, and entertained during what's otherwise maybe kind of a boring part of their lives. The next project is Exercise for CF Teens. This is led by a clinical exercise physiologist and pulmonary exercise specialist. And it's a virtual program that really is designed to help teens with CF learn proper exercise techniques strengthen their performance, learn how to build a routine that works for them, and how to just enjoy physical activity. So my next slide is projects that are open to all community members. These include clinicians. So if you're interested in participating yourselves, these are some great opportunities. The first is the I Can Imagine project. This is led by an artist and adult with CF who is post-transplant, Dylan Mortimer. And the program offers virtual art sessions to members of the CF community of all ages and abilities. Again, community very broadly defined there. The sessions really encourage the participants to channel their unique lived experience with CF, whether that's living with the disease or as a care partner, as a care team member, into the creation of healing imagery. Selected artworks may also be displayed in CF centers and hospitals to help inspire hope. So you can learn more about that project and how you can participate at the website below. I also want to point out that they will be in the Spotlight kiosk. So if you have an opportunity to stop by that in the exhibit hall, you'll be able to learn more about Dylan's work there. The next project is the CF Roundtable newsletter, and that is a quarterly print and digital publication that is written by adults with CF, but is available to the entire community. The articles focus on really great interest areas that are all identified by readers in the community as topics of interest. So some examples: aging with CF, diversity in the cystic fibrosis community, employment, remote work with cystic fibrosis, self-care strategies, and just so much more. There are transplant issues, issues on advanced lung disease. Really encourage you all to check it out. It's free for all subscribers, and it can be virtual or a paper copy, and you can learn more at their website. So finally, I'm going to just call attention to a couple of unique affinity groups that we are funding right now. The first is the National Organization of African Americans with Cystic Fibrosis, or NACFC. This is founded by an adult with cystic fibrosis, Terry Wright, and his spouse, Dr. Michelle Wright. And NACFC really aims to engage and support people with CF and their families within the African American community through a variety of different mediums, including online workshops and a virtual connection forum, as well as a Facebook group. They also do a lot of just awareness building and promotion of the idea that cystic fibrosis affects people of all races, including the African American community. You can visit their wonderful website and all of their resources at nacf.org. And then finally, promoting sexual and reproductive health, which is a hot topic as people with cystic fibrosis are living longer. So this year there are 2 projects supporting reproductive health in adults with cystic fibrosis. The CF Reproductive and Sexual Health Consortium, or CFRESH, and as well as STROLO-U, which stands for Stronger Longer University. And that second project is run by the CF Lifestyle Foundation. These groups provide virtual education and support space for people with CF around sexual and reproductive health, and they aim to develop resources for clinicians and as well as for people with CF to help discuss these topics. CFRESH is available for people assigned female at birth who have cystic fibrosis, and STROLO-U through the Cystic Fibrosis Lifestyle Foundation is available for people assigned male at birth. I have put both of their websites on this slide. So finally, just to wrap up, I just want to give a little reminder that if you know a community member with a big idea or someone who wants to participate in any of these projects, we would really love to hear from them. For those who are interested in applying, my team is very committed to working with members of the community to help them be as successful as possible throughout the application process. And I just want to stress, it is never too early to reach out to us. Formally, our application begins in early 2023, so you can look for it online. There will be some social media posts about that, and it will also be available at cff.org. But interested community members can also email impact@cff.org with any questions, and they can check out the Impact Grant homepage at cff.org under Get Involved. In addition to learning about how they can apply to make their own idea a reality through funding from the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, this will also give a complete list of all the funded opportunities that are available right now. Again, I was only able to touch on a smattering of them in this presentation, so really encourage you to check that out, and also to email us if you have any questions that we can answer or more information that we can provide. Thank you all so much for your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference. Thanks.
So many wonderful programs out there. I was thinking too, as Piper was talking about some programs that I didn't know about until I was involved in this workshop that I need to refer a lot of our patients to. Though I will put in a plug for, not that he needs a plug, for Dylan Mortimer. If you haven't been to an exhibit hall, it's this beautiful piece, like Florida, yeah, if some of you have seen it, it's stunning. And he has a book coming out called Guts, Glitter, Glory. I met his best friend who's at the Spotlight kiosk, and I actually was able to meet Dylan on the phone, and I've recruited him, Whitney. I've recruited him for our parent education night, hopefully if we have it in the spring. So he lives in LA now, which is great. I was like, can you come, and then can we have your artwork in our clinic, but for free? Who sponsors that? But he's great, and all of these programs look amazing, so I'm glad that Piper could share that. And I think I saw a lot of you taking pictures of the screen for like the website and links, but I'll ask Piper if we could also share her slides as well, and I can email them to the listserv. Okay, and so we have our next in-person speaker.
Yeah, so up next, we're excited to welcome Suri Vaith. Suri is the Executive Director of the Cystic Fibrosis Research Institute, known as CFRI, a national nonprofit organization which funds innovative cystic fibrosis research while providing educational, advocacy, and psychosocial support services for those living with CF. Her involvement with the organization began in 1995 after her daughter's diagnosis with CF. So welcome, Suri.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Are you with me?
Yes.
Who's from the West Coast? Okay, shout out, because my body clock is still saying it's 5:30 in the morning. What am I doing on a stage? No amount of coffee is going to overcome that. So second question, who knows about CFRI? All right. Who has ever referred a patient or family member to CFRI? Okay, well, hopefully those numbers will increase by the end of this. So it really is an honor to be here. For those who don't know about CFRI, we have basically 4 pillars to our organization. We do fund research at centers, at academic and medical centers nationwide. We pursue a lot of advocacy and awareness activities. We have many educational events. And what I will talk about today, we have a very strong psychosocial support component. I do have a daughter. She's 27. Her name's Tess. She has CF. When she was diagnosed in 1995, so prior to newborn screening, we had 5 months of complete hell and every test known to man except for the sweat chloride test. When she was finally diagnosed, I was very fortunate to be her center at Stanford. There was a flyer for a CFRI conference, and I went to it, and for me it was transformative. I found community, and I think that is the theme here today, and really for mental health across the ages and stages in the lifespan, it is about finding community and connection, because this is such an isolating disease and it is so stressful. And despite all the advances, maybe because of the advances, there's almost more room for people to be taking a look at their mental health instead of the key focus on treatments and staying alive each day. So let's see, I've already gone off script. That's dangerous. So my disclosures, you can see here, the programs I'm about to talk about have been funded by the companies listed here. That's the disclosure. My share is that in addition to those sources of funding, we have part of these programs are funded through families, CFRI community members who have lost loved ones to CF, who have then left funds to us because they realize the importance of mental health support. So always the level set. You can't have a social work session without mentioning the TIDE survey. So we all know elevated rates of anxiety and depression, 2 to 3 times the general population. We also, most notably, and I can say as the parent of a child with CF, who's now an adult, highest rates of anxiety and depression among mothers of children with CF. And I can tell you, anybody who's here who's a parent, when you see the medical trauma your children go through repeatedly, which my daughter's had multiple surgeries and hospitalizations, it's brutal to not be able to change your child's situation. So both parents and individuals with CF. We know everybody in the clinics are doing a great job really assessing patients and family members and seeing who could benefit from further mental health interventions, but we know lack of finances, lack of insurance, even if you have insurance, long waiting lists, lack of providers, it can be very, very hard to access mental health programs. And we do know that if a person is depressed, they will be less likely to adhere to their medical regimen. We also know that if parents are depressed, particularly with mothers, that their children are far less likely to adhere to their medical regimen. So CFRI has a range of mental health support programs, and I will start, we have support groups, counseling support, mindfulness sessions, wellness groups, and retreats. Monthly support groups, I hope, raise your hand if you got to hear Meg Dvorak, who's in the room here, and talk about the support group that she leads with Kate Yablonsky. We do have 7 monthly support groups. We have all the dates. You can take pictures of this, and then obviously we will connect later. We started off with 3 groups, adults with CF, caregivers, which are split into 2 groups, parents of kids, and then parents, partners, spouses of adults with CF. And we have always held these on Zoom long before COVID. We were having all of our online group sessions, support groups. The only thing that changed, Meg, was that Zoom bombing was not a thing before COVID. So we did have to kind of change the protocols to keep everybody safe there. But we have other groups. You may know many of the people who lead them. Marilyn Calderon from Children's National in Washington, D.C. leads a group for Spanish-speaking members of our community. I'll circle back to that one. We also have Teresa Priestley and Deb Mennett from Stanford lead a group for teens with CF. Again, Rachel, you can refer your students there. It is all about connection. We have a bereavement group that's led by Isa Stenzel Burns. Many of you may know Isa and her sister Anna, who passed away, The Power of Two. They wrote the book and the documentary. She leads a bereavement group. And then we have Sonia Haggett, who is a woman post-transplant, who leads the transplant group. Every single facilitator is a licensed clinical social worker. So they come with life experience, professional experience. It's the perfect blend. And I have to put a plug and a thanks to Dr. Lisa Scher, who for 2 full years led a group on COVID and CF for our community. So you can see to the right the unbelievable list of topics, and of course we know this is just the tip of that iceberg of the many issues that people are dealing with. Survivor's guilt, I think, is an increasing thing for many people who are now benefiting from Trikafta, whose friends may not have survived to reach this wonderful day. Sibling relationships, new financial stressors that we know about, embarrassment, shame, body image, too skinny, too heavy, it's all, you're across the map now. Isolation and loneliness, that has not gone away. And of course, the baby boom that everybody is seeing in the clinics, in the adult clinics, are leading to other issues. So about 250 participants now, 13 through 77, nearly every state in the US represented, and you can see the other countries because the joy of Zoom is that people can reach out from across the globe. I do want to say I did send out a survey from my Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee to, and many of you hopefully in the room filled out the survey about diversity. And one of the things, one of the questions was, what programs can we offer to your patients for whom especially English is a second language or for whom Spanish is a first language? Many people said, oh, a support group would be helpful. And that was good for me to know because we offer one and we really want people to know. So afterwards, You can talk to me if there's a better way to share information with you. Meg is so wonderful about sharing our information through the listserv, but we do have a group for your Spanish-speaking families. Counseling support. We know that, I have to know that people in this room have patients, families. The first hardest step is the person actually making the reach out to say, yes, I want to get therapy. But for those people who cross that, the biggest burden, the biggest hurdle, quite often once they get there, there is no accessibility to those services for all the reasons that I mentioned before. And so since 2014, we've been offering financial support for counseling services, eligibility, CF diagnosis, or an immediate family member. So we have siblings of kids with CF, we have spouses, we have partners, we have parents. And it is, for most people, the only therapy they're going to receive in a year. The joy of this program is that people can find their own provider. It's not based on a list that is restricted by the insurance company. And if they can find somebody that they work well with, we will cover 6 sessions up to $120. I'm from California, Northern California. Finding therapy for $120, that's a challenge. But we do have a lot of therapists who actually reduce their rates to accommodate this and reduce to a minimal amount or nothing the copay to facilitate this to happen. And we do use the GAD-7, the PHQ-9, we do pre-assessments. That's part of the contract with the providers, that they agree they will participate in the counseling. And truth be told, the carrot on the stick, that they fill out the pre, that's how they get approval to start the sessions. For the last session, when we get the post, we reimburse for the final session. It has really helped with evaluation collection. I won't go through all the rates here, but I think what's interesting to see is that in last year, 106 people started the program. 65% of those people were individuals with CF, 35% parents, spouses, partners, siblings. 12% were under 18 years old, and we have participants from 21 states, which says there's a lot of states that people are not taking advantage of this program. So please, the board of directors of CFRI is so committed to psychosocial support programs. We want to make sure if you come to us, we can accommodate your patients and families. Mindfulness sessions. Does anybody here know Dr. Julie Dash? Oh, the lucky ones. Dr. Dash is an adult with CF. She's a retired pathologist. She became a certified mindfulness instructor years ago. We started providing mindfulness classes many years ago. And of course, it's almost become a joke, right? Oh, let's be mindful about this. The mindfulness, taste the raisin. But I have to say, there are so many studies on mindfulness. It works. It is a powerful tool and an accessible tool for people to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. And so we've done this in many formats. We've got 6-week classes, 8-week classes. For now, we have just a monthly drop-in where people can come. Julie leads you through some basic mindfulness practices and then ends it with a guided meditation. And it is very helpful. And I will say, I've done her classes through the years, and I try and channel Julie Dash every day. In fact, I got so excited to come up here on the stage, I meant for us all to take a deep breath together because you've been sitting for a long time. In fact, everybody, why don't you just stretch for a second? Take a deep breath. We're all here together. It's still early. We need to be awake together. So wellness slides. Taylor Lewis was just mentioned. He's just such an awesome person. We have clearly documented and quantified the mind-body connection. And having exercise, it addresses physical health issues, obviously, but it has a direct translation to improve mental health. And numerous studies do document the positive impact of physical movement and exercise. It's correlated with emotional resilience in adults who are facing acute stress. It's been shown to decrease depression among those coping with chronic disease. And so we want to offer a way for people to come together, move their bodies, but also, the key word here, have community and connect with other people and reduce isolation. So, for example, now we know any one of us can log onto YouTube. We can dance, we can do yoga, there's a million exercise programs. The difference here is we have our instructors have a connection to CF. So, for example, for yoga, we have an adult with CF who's a certified instructor, and she's teaching her classes from Ohio. We have a mother, she's a certified instructor, she has 2 kids with CF. She teaches from her studio in Idaho. People are logging in literally from around the globe. I've done yoga with people from Canada and Argentina. And then when the classes are over, it's like hanging out afterwards to catch up with people. So it isn't just like classes over, goodbye, log off. People have the opportunity to stay and visit and connect. And so that, I think, is part, the big impact here in that connection to mental health. Okay, this is going to make some people nervous, but for years, CFRI has offered an adult retreat, CF Adult Retreat, in which adults with CF do come together. Now, those of you who are like inside, just especially after this last presentation we just had about the high school, I will say, it's all based sputum cultures, doctors sign off, stringent infection control. There's 2 people without CF for every person with CF to help. Nobody touches anything. I could go on and on. So we'll let that go. What I can say is for the adults that come to this, they say the educated risks they are assuming are worth everything to them, that it is the most important few days of their year to have this in-person connection. So then COVID hit, so it went virtual, of course, and who knows whether we can go back to an in-person thing ever. But this is where the joy of us being together in person in a room, what a difference this makes. Conversely, accessibility with the virtual realm, you just can't argue with that. And so instead, 90 people from across the country and England and Australia all come together for these retreats, which used to be once a year, now it's twice a year. And then people were so into connecting with each other, we now have a monthly book club that spun out that. We have a monthly coffee and crafts morning. Sometimes there are game nights. So again, connection, community, improve mental health across the board. So I do hope people will refer their adult patients to CFRI for these. Then we also have a retreat for mothers. Circling back to the acute stress that many mothers experience, we have an annual Embrace retreat for mothers of children and adults. It's held in California. It was virtual the past 2 years. We just had our first in-person event last September, 2 months ago, since COVID began. And there is something. I love the young man in the video when he said, I don't know them, but I know them. We're not hanging out, but I kind of know them. And I think that is the thing with this community. I often joke that Kevin Bacon's 6 degrees of separation, that's for the rest of the world. We all have 2 degrees of separation here. There is a connection that is so strong with this community. And I think we all speak sort of, as I say, the dialect of CF. And this goes for people with CF, it goes for the mothers. And why I love this photo, if you look at it, these women are from all across the United States. There are women in this picture whose kids have just been diagnosed and they are hungry to connect with other moms and know what the path is going to be. There are people here whose kids had late diagnosis, most likely because of their race and ethnicity. There are women here whose kids have had transplants, and there are women in this photo who have lost their kids. And you would think, oh, that sounds like a bit of a social work nightmare if you have somebody who's lost a child to CF and you have somebody who's newly diagnosed. This is not going to be good for anybody. It is actually just the reverse. It is that dialect. It is that complete understanding. And again, the mothers that participate, many come back every year because it is so restorative for them. And really, they say, builds their resilience, for the rest of the year until they can come back. So, okay, segue. First, I thought, well, you're going to think it's a leap to go from counseling support to CF in the classroom. But it all is tying together so beautifully with Beth's presentation, Rachel's presentation. This book, CF in the Classroom, or Fibrosis Quística en la Clase, single-handedly our most popular printed resource. We send out thousands of them. And it's been outdated, so we just recently updated. Really, Kim kind of pushed me to get this done before the conference.
I love
Thank
this
you.
new cover. This is
So,
great.
isn't it
It's
great?
beautiful.
So, and it really does touch on, it is everything, it's about CF, and it takes you through all the stages, the IEPs, the 504s, preparing for college. I can say as a parent, every transition was tough. That first day at kindergarten, oh my God, what do I do? How can I let go? Will she take her enzymes? All those things, all the way through middle school, high school, then off to college. So very, very helpful. I will also say people love this book because we all have family members and friends who act like they get it, but they don't get it. They come over with the colds, and this is just such a great, here, just read this. It will explain everything. So I do have some copies over there. I brought about 20. There's the Spanish and the English. I do not want to carry them back to California. Please take them. They are available at no cost. So if any of you email our office and request, we will send them in bulk at no cost to your clinic to distribute. So please, and then we will also have it on our website, so you could share the link if patients and families want to access that. So with that, I should put my email here, but poor Sabina, my colleague at CFRI, who really does handle the details for most of the programs that I've just discussed, and she welcomes your emails, your inquiries. You can also go to our website to find out. Again, what I love about our community, I always say, everybody needs to find their home, their place, their connection. We have so many wonderful resources we've heard about today, and I just really encourage you to use every single CF organizational resource there is out there for your patients and families. We offer a lot, all the organizations do, and it really does make a huge difference for people's mental health. So with that, I guess, are we doing all the questions later? Okay, well, I thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Siri. Yes, I love all the programs that she mentioned. And every time I think, oh gosh, we should have a group for maybe caregivers. Oh, no, CFRI has one. Great, excellent. Just email blast that. And maybe we should have one for teenagers. Oh, CFRI created one. Thank you. And I do love the CF in the classroom so much. It's a great resource. And I love how you said, I hadn't heard that term before, the CF dialect. And just the community, and it's really great to see how many people from all over the world have connected. I knew definitely nationally, but all over the world have connected and benefited from all of these wonderful programs. So thank you, Siri, for being here, and we'll do some questions in a bit. We have one more presentation. Emily is, I think, back in Michigan. She has a Rock CF event happening today. So we have her on video, and I'll have Megan introduce her.
So our final presenter, Emily Schaller, is the founder of Rock CF Foundation, which she started in 2007 to heighten public awareness and raise funds to increase the quality of life for everyone with CF.
It was working earlier. Is there anyone from IT here? No, it's on. Let me see. Let me make sure. Oh, maybe I opened the wrong one. There we go. There we go. Got it.
All right, my name is Emily Schaller. I'm the founder of the Rock CF Foundation, and I have the following relationship to disclose, and that is funding for the Rock CF Foundation's Bowman Brothers Trade School Scholarship was provided by Beatrice. The Rock CF Foundation is a nonprofit that I founded in 2007, 15 years ago. I had no clue what I was doing back then. But here we are 15 years later, and we have a focus and a mission. And the mission is to heighten awareness about cystic fibrosis by utilizing the arts, entertainment, fashion, and especially fitness as avenues. We do annual runs to raise awareness for CF and bring in funds for the foundation. Our biggest program is the Rock CF Kickback program, where we donate running shoes to people with cystic fibrosis to get them either off the couch or so they can continue to be active, because we know exercise is so good for our lungs. But more importantly now, we're in the age of modulators and more, and exercise is going to pay off in the long run as we grow old and have these adult diseases that the general population has. I myself have cystic fibrosis. I turned 40 years old in February. I was diagnosed with CF when I was 18 months old back in 1983. Prognosis was not great back then. They told my parents I would not live long enough to graduate from high school because we didn't have medicines. And here we are with hours of inhaled medications, pills, but most importantly, modulators for a majority of us that are changing lives. Which brings us to why we're here today. How are we going to navigate the future with cystic fibrosis? I myself have gone through this, and I'll explain it down the road, but I'm excited for all the other presenters who have spoken and who will speak about what they're doing to help this community as we are reaching a more normal life. So the Rock CF Foundation is giving people with cystic fibrosis the tools not only to survive, but to thrive. And I think that's the biggest thing. Is I know you guys see it in clinic. You see some patients who are just thriving and doing great and have access to resources. They have an education. They have a parent or family that is supportive with this. But a lot of us see people in the CF community who don't have access to this. So here's what we're doing to kind of help these people. My story with this is about 12 years ago now, I started Kaleido, and I'm fortunate enough, I can't even describe it, to have the G551D mutation. And I was part of the clinical trial for this VX770 at the time. And my life was completely changed unexpectedly. At the time, Kaleido was only approved for about 4 to 6% of the CF population. So we weren't seeing masses of people getting better and having their lives changed and turned upside down for the good. So it was a lot of trial and error for me. I went from being very sick in the hospital 3 to 4 times a year for exacerbations, watching my lung function plummet, not having a future. I went to college for about 1.5 years, maybe 2, and then decided that it wasn't my thing because I didn't think I'd be alive anyway, so why waste the time and money to do so? I started working retail around the city of Detroit at local shops for the Detroit Red Wings, for the Detroit Tigers, playing drums in a rock and roll band in smoky bars, partying a lot, and I was living life like there was no tomorrow. And I know a lot of us have seen, I know myself, friends live that way, and most are no longer here who live that way. And I know in clinics, we have been seeing it that way, especially on the adult side, until recently, right? I didn't have hope. I heard at this conference every year that something big was coming, that there's a cure. In the 90s, it was like, we're going to cure CF. So that the hope was in the back of my mind, but it wasn't a reality, right? Until Kaleido came along for me. And at the time of starting the clinical trial and then starting the newly approved Kaleido, I was on Social Security disability, making an awesome $1,100 a month, living with my parents, working under the table, no college degree, no skill set, no plans for a future, no retirement, nothing. I was just living day to day, right? Fortunately and unfortunately, Kaleido came along and changed my life. Fortunate sides are obviously I felt better than I've ever felt in my entire life. My lung function skyrocketed. It felt like somebody flipped a switch on the back of my head and said, this is what you've been missing out on for 28 or 29 years, and good luck. And I was actually laughed at by somebody at the foundation when I told them, like, hey, I'm getting kicked off my Social Security disability, Medicare, because I'm too healthy. And the response was, wow, look at this. People on Kaleido are so healthy, they're being kicked off. And it made me want to cry. Like, I went home and cried that night and said, wow, I'm glad you guys are excited, but there's no support. Nobody's helping me. I have to navigate this myself. There weren't tens of thousands of others on this drug. There was only a few hundred or 1,000, and I didn't know really anybody else. So I had to navigate my life the last 12 years and figure out how the heck to do this, and it was scary. I, again, kicked off all my benefits, so I had to find health insurance. There was no outside help or resources from anybody. I had to do it myself because it was so new. We weren't seeing patients do this aside from lung transplant. But to have this sudden health change, while it's great, was also challenging, stressful, anxiety-ridden, and here we are today seeing thousands of others face this. And we saw it with the, obviously, clinical trials for it now, Trikafta, and the approval late 2019. I'm not good at math, but I think 2019, before the pandemic hit. Stories started coming out about people going through exactly what I went through 12 years ago. I'm so healthy. I don't know what to do with my life. I need to start working full time. I'm getting kicked off Social Security disability. I need to plan a future because I'm going to be around for a long time. These stories started coming out, and it really resonated with me because I'm like, wow, what were we doing the past 10 years when a small portion of us were going through this? Who is thinking about this? And not a lot of people were. So once these stories started coming out of my friends and the community starting Trikafta and having this sudden life change, I knew we had to do something at RockCF to help these people. So one of the biggest things we did was brainstorm and think about trade school. And I know there's scholarships, there have been wonderful scholarships from other organizations out for years, helping a lot of people go to these four-year colleges, universities, get these awesome degrees. But here we have a community, a lot of us in our late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe who've never worked, never went to college, didn't get a college degree, don't have a skill set, lived on Social Security disability, and now they're being forced to join the workforce. And I'm not sure, maybe Beth Suffian can touch on this more, but I'm not sure the turnover rate we're seeing right now of people getting kicked off, but it's got to be coming because the community is trending so positively. So trade school provides something that four-year colleges don't. And which is why we started the Bowman Brothers Trade School Scholarship. Pictured here is Brett Bowman, my buddy who has cystic fibrosis. He's a double lung transplant recipient and had complications with his transplant, and he went completely blind. He had a little brother with CF, also Blake, that had cystic fibrosis, and he passed away a few years ago. They're a local family friend of mine. And thinking about their story and their journey, we decided to start the scholarship in their honor. And then after that, found out that Brett, pictured here, is actually going to trade school to be a sports massage therapist. So it works out perfectly. Trade schools, we've heard it forever. When I was in high school, it was the alternative kids that went to classes to learn trades. But now, 22 years later, since I graduated, it makes sense. We should be doing more hands-on training and more skill-based training. Trade school provides that as a great alternative to four-year college. It's important for those getting a new start later in life, which I was talking about before, is people who lived on Social Security disability, no skill set, no career, now being forced to join the workforce. Trade school is a great option for them. It's also good for people coming out of high school who just want to go right to the workforce, not go into college debt, and come out with a career after 2 years or so. It's a shorter duration of school. All of them obviously range, but 2 years is generally, I think, the standard. The classes are really career focused. So if you're going to be an electrician, you're taking electrical classes. maybe 2 days a week. And then you're also working 40 hours a week as an electrical apprentice, right? That's just electrician. Other positions do the same. It's on-the-job training. So if you're going to school a couple of days, but you are working in that field 35 to 40 hours a week, getting that training, getting the skill set, learning the trade, and then you're going to be placed maybe with that position or another position down the road. But you come out qualified. And it's a direct entry into a career path of your choosing. We always think electrician, plumbers, but it's so much bigger than that. Cosmetology, veterinary school, civil engineering. There's a whole list of trade school options, so think outside the box for this. Our trade school scholarship is 8 $5,000 scholarships, open to graduating seniors from high school and ranging to adults. We have given out 5 so far this year, so there are 3 left. And I urge you, talk to your patients. If your patients are stuck and they don't know what to do with their life, or they're facing this impending losing of your disability benefits because you're too healthy, trade school might be a good option for these patients. So do research, think outside the box. 3 left. Please help us award these scholarships. The money is there. We will pay for college, trade school. Some of the trade school we've given scholarships to this year, there's actually 2 guys, gentlemen going to lineman school. So those guys will be climbing up poles and fixing your electricity, which is great. We have a veterinary tech school recipient, sports massage therapy for Blake, and he's almost done. I think he's in his last semester or year, so he'll come out with a career. And a nurse's associate degree is another recipient. To apply for the scholarship, it's pretty cut and dry, super easy. There's a application on the RockCF website. The RockCF website is letsrockcf.org. You can click on the Bowman Brothers Trade School Scholarship and download the application or have your patients download the application, complete it and sign it. We do need a letter from the CF Center confirming the diagnosis of cystic fibrosis for the applicant. There's a 2-part essay. We do look for an unofficial or official high school college transcript. Some people maybe went to college for a couple years and are going back to trade school. We'll take high school or college transcripts. And then a tuition breakdown will help a lot so we know the cost of funds. This year, again, we've awarded 5 scholarships, fully covered. I think most of them covered the entire schooling. One is even living on campus, so part of the funding helped pay for her meal plan because CF people got to eat. And one of the ones I'm most excited about is Rosemary G. She's 31 years old, has 2 kids, is a single mom, and her essay was quite awesome to read because it really resonated with my story of being sick, not planning for a future, but always wanted to do something. And then given this possibility with the newest modulator, here she is attending veterinary school. And she says, now thanks to Trikafta, I have been able to stay out of the hospital for 2 years. This gives me hope that I can continue to stay out of the hospital and hold my dream job. Now she's going to vet tech school, but down the road she mentioned she wants to be a veterinarian. So it's never too late to start, guys. Again, to apply for the Bowman Brothers Trade School Scholarship, visit letsrockcf.org. Maybe print some off, leave them in clinic, or pass it on to your patients to download. And hopefully the scholarship will be around in 2023. Remember that trade schools some of them start at really odd times, so it's not just fall, it's not just spring. It can be kind of scattered throughout. So don't be turned away, research it, and let's get these scholarships going. The CF community is growing and changing and evolving, and we need to help them. I needed help 10 years ago, and I didn't get it, but here we are today, this whole group of us, we're here to help.
I love all that she shared, and when Emily said she wanted to have hope, but it just wasn't a reality, and it sounds like it is a reality for a lot of people, and we will keep thinking outside of the box, and it, like she said, it's never too late. So I love this presentation. So I just wanted to briefly share before we go into Q&A some accommodations from coast to coast, as Megan and I are representing from west to east coast, from pediatric through adulthood. We just wanted to share some photos of some of our patients that are receiving these accommodations and supports in our own care centers. So this is Marjorie, age 12. She was so cute, she put on her school uniform for the picture, which is a white shirt with navy pants. But she's admitted often. Up until recently, she had outpatient visits monthly for port flushes. So she's one of our kiddos who does miss quite a bit of school. So her 504 accommodations plan supports, as we've known from the other speakers, just having extra time for missed classes, homework. I did want to add earlier, I found out recently that if you do have patients that are maybe bullied, I know that can be unfortunately a common theme, that are bullied because of their disability or because they have CF, they're the kid that coughs, that there can be protections under under Section 504 and actually built into their accommodations plan, where the school does need to address that in the accommodations plan in terms of what they're going to do to support the child who is being bullied. So I just wanted to add that as well. I didn't know that before. So her accommodation plan supports for the missed classes and homework. This is not quite as crazy as Rachel's scenario, but there is another sixth grader also is our patient at her school. So that school nurse, we could use Rachel there. I don't know if you want to come to the West Coast. We have good weather. Who received infection control education. I will probably share that plan with her as well. And then there's a great handout on the CFF website when there's more than one person with CF at school. And then I can probably share Rachel's blogs and that too. I think that would be really helpful. And then this is Malachi, age 15. Didn't have the new copy. I love that new cover. But I have like 100 of these in some cabinet. I give these out like hotcakes. Like people want 7, 1 for each teacher for the coach. I think I just emailed the PDF form to Mom every year, all the teachers. So he has like 6 teachers receive copies of that booklet. He's very active. You can't tell in this picture, he's our tallest patient at age 15. He's already 6'3", almost 6'4". You can kind of tell he's a great basketball player, so stays very active. So the CF in the classroom, we've also used it for his coaches. He goes to camps for anyone involved in his life to kind of understand better about CF. Grace Rose, that's not an error. She didn't really want to show her whole face, but that is her with her dog. She travels between the West and East Coast for college. With documentation, her dog is able to accompany her on flights to prevent panic attacks that she's had before. And her dog provides also calming and emotional supportive presence during CF treatments. And then this is a college student, Sophia. She, I don't know if this was mentioned, but in college, students can register with the university students, has a different name, Student Services, Office of Disabilities, whatever it's named, for protections and accommodations, including their housing. So there's a lot of coordination, some back and forth, but she was able to be given her own dorm room with a shared bathroom. That was, if she wanted a private bathroom, private room, with shared bathroom for her freshman year. Hopefully she has air conditioning as well. There she is. And then we have Gabrielle, age 43.
Yeah, sure. Gabby's one of our adult patients at Johns Hopkins, and we were able to provide a lot of support for her dog to be able to live with her in her condo, and just a great quote from her up there, being allowed to have Buck in my apartment as my emotional support animal has made it so that my help her with her anxiety, days to get outside and make her keep moving, so.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes for question and answers. I'll have Siri come back up. We have some questions coming through the app, and that we can address. I think some of them. Let's see.
Yeah, so Siri, there's a few questions for you to start us off. So one of them, someone's wondering about the translation of the CFRI brochure for in the CF in the classroom in other languages besides Spanish. So Arabic specifically was asked about.
Well, that is a great question, and for now, we have it in Spanish. It is interesting. We do a lot of work in the diversity and inclusion realm. And as I'm sure you've heard maybe at Stanford, there's a group of people, they did a study, they took all the UK registry info, US registry info, Canadian registry info, and teased it out because, of course, when you look at the demographics of who is most likely to be diagnosed, which groups, racial and ethnic groups, what's the propensity in each group, Asian population is this huge cluster, Asian. It's like this billions of people under that category. And what they teased out was that South Asian population has very high rates of CF, but they get watered down because they've been lumped into this cluster of Asians. So we actually at CFRI have started to do translations of materials and some of our podcasts to Hindi to make them more accessible. And it is interesting because now with the groups, we're getting people, not from France, but from Canada, who are asking us to do more of our things in French. So we've started with Spanish. As we all know, translation is very expensive, so funding dependent, and I think it is really, I will say CFRI tries to be so very nimble and responsive. So if we were getting a lot of input from people saying this is a specific language in which this community would benefit for it, we would try and work so that we could have the funding to translate.
Okay, a couple more for you. So you can just get comfortable. Yeah. Okay. So wondering if providers can drop into the mindfulness group.
Providers can. We have had providers there. We just ask that people disclose. But yes, I mean the mental health of providers. It's I'm an MSW. It's you carry the load of your patients and families. It's impossible. There's the professional boundaries, but emotionally you feel people's pain and hope. So yes, mindfulness would be very helpful.
Okay, and then a couple questions about funding. Some people are wondering about funding for the Mother's Retreat, if that's available, if support's available for to get mothers there.
That is my fantasy of fantasies, to have the funding. We do provide, I will say, it's 2 nights, all meals, and it's everything. Journaling, yoga, we had an amazing drum circle. There's so much going on at this. Women, I think this year paid, it was $160 for everything. But we did give, comp people's registrations to make it accessible. We don't have the budget, we didn't this year, to help with the traveling expenses, but that is something that I would love to be able to do because, again, it's such an amazing event for mothers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll switch it up. Rachel, this question is for you. Sure. So your action plan presumed that kids were okay with other people knowing about CF.
Yes.
So maybe if you could speak to a little bit, or I don't know if, wondering how teens that don't want to tell everyone
Sure.
or disclose how they might.
So our 3 students were okay, and that's why I created the consent form, just so they knew that their information was going to be shared. I have worked with some nurses in different states where they did have 2 students, and one of them did not want to disclose. And of course, that is their right, and it comes down to the staff. The staff needs to make sure that that student is separate from the other, and it's difficult, and a lot of times we try to tell them that it's in everyone's best interest, especially theirs, from a health perspective, that we at least disclose to the other person that has CF, but there have been times where it's just basically the staff that has to do it, and it's difficult, but it's doable.
Did anyone in the audience who didn't have a chance to submit through the app have a question? Oh, yeah, nice.
Such a great question. Absolutely, they can be in the midst of therapy, have a provider they work with for any time. We will then jump in and cover those because it's just, cost is so prohibitive for people. So if we can, our thinking is if we can fund those 6 sessions, it will then give them further options. So we are very happy to do that.
Yes.
6 sessions per year, and, this is the hard thing. We used to do 8 sessions, but then we couldn't meet the demand, and so we thought we'd rather, we had to find, then it was down to 5, now 6 is our magic number. And people can use it any way they want. So we have some people who come in and they have 6 weeks in succession. We have people who stretch it out over a course of months, every couple weeks, so that they can make it last as long. I'll just say, the people who are, that really benefit are the ones who, log in towards the end of the year, because every calendar year, it's a new clock, and we don't limit it. It's not that you've had it, so you don't get to have it again. It's whoever comes to us. So we do have people who have managed now to come around the horn, they do the end, and then they go to the next year.
Yeah, because there were quite a few questions in the app about fiscal year, calendar year, so I think you just answered that. So calendar year, and it sounds like towards the end.
And obviously, when people need it is when they need it.
Yeah.
But, if somebody were to start now, through November, they literally could do 6 weeks of counseling. And that's, of course, with the provider being very responsive to us, getting those forms completed, giving us proof of licensing. But then they would be able to re-up for 2023.
Somebody else have a question? Yeah, I think. Any other questions? I think we cover most of the themes in the. Oh, yeah. Sorry?
Yes. And that about the cost. And some people, we always say we can cover 120. It is up to you to negotiate with your provider. We do when we have our communication with the provider, because we don't pay, the patient is never a pass-through for funds. It's the patient comes to us, then we connect with the provider. So we do say, obviously rates for many people are higher. We appreciate you reducing the rate. We do have some therapists who do that so that the patient has no copay or a minor one. Yes, I would love to have that. She's my walking buddy. We walked her this morning.
Thank you, that's a great.
I didn't know we'd be here.
Like Emily said, we think outside the box. And then Rachel had one, something came up in terms of Sarah having a service animal, not emotional support animal. That's a whole other presentation about the differences, but I'll have her.
So the third blog that I wrote for the CF Foundation talks about Sarah, and we were able to, let me back up. I volunteer at a service dog organization in town, and the worlds collided because Sarah, from an emotional standpoint, was having a lot of trouble, a lot of isolation, a lot of depression, but also she was really fragile with her respiratory status. So we got her a dog, and the dog's name is Rosie, 65 Roses, Rosie. And she is a service dog. So she goes wherever Sarah goes. And what makes her a service dog is the tasks that she does. So a service dog has to have a task. Rosie has a couple tasks. Rosie can get her medication for her. Sarah will tell Rosie to get the medication, and she will. But she's also been trained to know when Sarah's respiratory status is decreasing, and she will either alert Sarah if Sarah is alert herself, or alert Sarah's parents at night, and that's the biggest thing. So she will go in to Sarah's parents and there's a sign, she nudges their hand with her nose, and they know that Sarah is having some respiratory issues. So she has these tasks that she does, so she is a service dog. Service dogs go wherever. Emotional support dogs, a facility or a place of business could refuse, I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it happens, could refuse an emotional support dog, but a service dog can go wherever the recipient goes. And they don't need to have proof. They don't need to argue with them. The place that they're going to could ask, what is the task that the dog does for you? And she says, respiratory alert, and that's that. Did you have a question? Oh, no.
I love that. Again, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
And it's a new thing, so if anyone has any questions, I can try to help you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you for both of our speakers for being here, for those online, for all of you for showing up so early on Saturday. Enjoy the last bit of the conference. Our session is now concluded. Thank you.